I'm with Elana Heideman, and we're talking about the very sad handover of four bodies today. We've got the Bibas family, and it's important that we name them: the mother Shiri, and the children Kfir and Ariel, and Oded Lifchitz. How is Israel feeling today about this?
Devastated, devastated and unable to breathe. It is a very astounding situation to find ourselves in after 503 days of hope, to discover that this symbolic family, the Bibas mother and children, that they have been murdered while in captivity. Everyone has seen their faces and knows their stories. We all watched as Yarden was released recently, and now we learn of their having been murdered. It is Israel is feeling at a complete loss. I believe every Israeli and any friend of Israel in the world is confused because we don't understand how the world has allowed this to happen.
And they've been quite well known that were part of the face of the kidnapped, haven't they? Same as Hirsch Goldberg was sort of part of the face of those people who were kidnapped. The Bibas family have been very, very important as a face out there, haven't they?
They have. And that has been important to humanizing the story of what Israelis are experiencing all of this time since October 7th, 2023. Since the day where we watched these families be burned alive and beheaded and abused, and Shiri and her babies taken away. And important to emphasize, not by Hamas. They were kidnapped by local Gazan civilians who found joy in taking part in this onslaught against Jews, like the one individual who calls his father on a recording that we have, that he says, "I am calling you from the phone of a Jew. I killed 10 Jews." That thirst for blood and that excitement was not just a Hamas issue. And today we have to see that all of Gazan society has been educated to believe that Hamas ideology is an acceptable ideology. It is not. And we must stop anyone in the world from believing that there is logic behind that argument. We also need to start realizing that anyone who does try to legitimize that argument is themselves a supporter of terror and should be accountable for that. So there are so many things that we are digesting right now in terms of how they, as a symbol, help us drive forward. There's a beautiful graphic that's circulating that says, "May their memory," and you're right, it was also about Hirsch and several others, Omer Nutra, another American citizen, and others from different, Emily Damari for England. And you have different ones that you say, "May their memory," or "may their spirit, may their strength be a revolution." And that's what we need, for there to be a revolution in the name of the Bibas children. They call the Jews baby killers. They've been doing it for thousands of years. Now we see and we show who are the baby killers. They stole 2 children in their bed. They don't know if they're going to be able to identify the body of Kfir, the baby, because you identify, depending on the situation of the remains, by the teeth. You need teeth, and he had none. So there are so many issues about this family becoming the symbol that perhaps could drive humanity forward. Can we see with today's release, and to speak of Oded Lifchitz, it's important to recognize this was a very far left activist, someone who did not love the government, and he did not love elements of the state, and we all don't love anything about wherever we live. And we don't love every politician, and we don't love every policy. But he was very, very much a longtime activist and one of the founders of Nir Oz. And so he's a symbol in a different way for a different element of society. Even his wife, Yocheved, who was freed from captivity. She even has spoken about it. He used to drive for many years on the project Roads to Recovery, driving Gazan children who received medical care in Israel. You see, we have been feeding this idea that there is a potential for peace with these people, and they have been educated that the only reason that Israel exists is for them to use us, manipulate us, and then kill us. And the Bibas family is a symbol and must be for every good human being out there that we have to find a way to tell the story better, to be more active and to be more vocal. Because what is an icon? What is a memory of them? Every time I see a child with red hair, you can't help but have your breath stopped. And that's going to stay with us. We're going to remember them. But how do we turn their memory into revolution? That's going to require a more involved world.
Mm. Now, the bodies have been handed over to Israel. I imagine now there is DNA testing to confirm that these bodies actually are the Bibas family and Oded as well. Will they also
Yes.
find out how they died, do you think?
Well, first, it has to be emphasized that they delivered coffins that were locked with keys that did not unlock them. Then they had to be checked by a bomb squad to be sure that there were no hidden explosives inside. This is not new. There were explosives found inside of bodies on October 7th because they were anticipating that someone would come to save them and they would be able to kill them too. So it was checked by the bomb squad. And they had a very small ceremony with the reciting of the Jewish prayer for the dead. And then they were handed off to the IDF, to our beloved defense forces. Can you imagine what we have to go through? And then they, yes, go off to a place named Abu Kabir, which they will do a testing of the DNA from what is possible, and they do have DNA from all 4 of these victims. And as I mentioned, the identification of the bodies will be difficult because of the amount of decay that could have happened over 500 days in captivity without knowing when. In terms of determining when, that will be, that will take many more hours, and it cannot be given as a precise detail of exactly what day or hour, but they do know that they'll be able to identify some element of cause. Now, of course, the Hamas propaganda machine is trying to brainwash people to believing that Israel is to blame. Israel's Air Force bombing these areas caused their deaths. And in their staged Squid Game propaganda style, they put a horrific picture of our prime minister, of Bibi Netanyahu, as the devil with fangs and blood coming out of his mouth. And this is supposed to convince the world. All of those college students and all of the advocates and the UN officers and all of the politicians, all the people who are defending Hamas, this is what they stand up for. Delivering 4 coffins, by the way, you should know, they were 4 adult-sized coffins. So the full identification of the bodies, of course, does have to happen in our hands. And there are lots of people who wish that they would open the coffins and declare to the world, no, these are 3 other people. These are not the Bibases. They're still alive. I'm telling you, there are people like myself this morning. I thought, isn't that possible? Couldn't it be God give us a miracle? It's such a desperate, when you ask how we're feeling, I think that, I had to wake up and know that this was happening. And how did I tell which child at which time? Because I knew that in school, they were going to be discussing this. They had distributed last night already. There was a warning. We cannot eulogize the dead if the dead is not in our hands. We have been waiting for some of the bodies. One of the hostages who was discovered and returned to the country by the IDF has been there for many years. And we have hostages coming back alive this Saturday who have been hostages for 10 years. It's how are we feeling is in upheaval and unable to maintain any sort of balance. but we must, because we know that we live for Yarden and for him to be strengthened, and for all of the families and all of the returned hostages to be able to live lives and appreciate that they have the state of Israel to take care of them and the people of Israel to care for them. Without that, as we see hate against Jews rising around the world, without that, we have almost nothing.
Of course, when it's confirmed that it is the Bibas family, it will actually mean closure. But it's still very sad, isn't it? And do you think the nation will rally around the father Yarden, who himself was actually a kidnapped victim?
Yes, absolutely. I think that there's going to be a big change in Israel as a result of everything that we're experiencing in terms of whose voices we're going to hear affecting policy and civic society. There is a major call right now for unity. Some of the disunity that we are experiencing in Israel is actually being fueled and fed by funds and organizations out in the diaspora outside of Israel. And this is one of the most dangerous elements that we have to fight because we don't know how. How do you fight with your brother or cousin or family when the goal is to be united? That's what everybody's saying. Be united. Only together, only in unity will we be able to outlast this. And even the released hostages have shared that their captors would always say that when Israel is united, that is when they are afraid. And that is when Israel is strongest. And so we need to use that. And we need to do more with exactly what these desperate families who have been living this more intimately even than any of us, who we feel our own pain, but it's nothing in comparison with what they're going through. So is there closure? I think to a certain extent, but no, I'm not sure there will ever fully be closure for anyone after October 7th. And I don't know if we want it. Do we want closure, or do we need to create the outrage more and more and more in order to resist what they have legitimized as resistance murder? That's what they are saying is acceptable in our world. Unless we create greater outrage and silence their voice by reaching out and getting involved in every possible avenue, by taking time out of somebody's day of their general life and saying, I can't be silent here. Only then can we reach closure, if we prevent the next October 7th.
Do you think the world could have done more to save them?
Yes. I don't believe anyone has put any pressure on the bodies that are actually in control. All of the pressure is on Bibi and the Bibi haters of the world, and the campaign that it's, his politicking, when in fact it's actually been also recently discussed that some of the members of the negotiating team were actually more interested in concessions. Again and again, we'll give you anything at any price. So now we've released, just for these bodies today, several hundred terrorists who have murdered several hundreds amongst them. This is a terrible cycle, and we have to put a closure to the cycle as well. So I think that the world's involvement needs to be by changing the dynamics of the United Nations and other international bodies. The Red Cross should be cut down to their knees, and all funding stopped, just as funding for UNRWA and other organizations that have been funneling, US aid included, funneling money into terror. The only reason that 50,000 local civilians are now in pristine new uniforms with massive stages and printing and everything on show and well fed, and every day videos come out about their good food in Gaza. It's all everything that they're showing to have the world pity them is a show. And I feel bad for refugees everywhere in the world, but we have to see that they are fooling the world, and we have to stand up against it. They are presenting a They are presenting a picture of power. We have to take that power away by demonstrating to the world that this is a farce. Call it out. My prayer is that more people feel confident to do so. However, I also believe that people are afraid, and rightly so. And there are many ways to create action that do not expose even your personal identity, allow you to do more. My prayer is that we will do more and immediately get back in one call from around the world a demand for all hostages to be released at once. There are going to be, by the end of this phase, 63 hostages remaining in captivity. We need a global call to release them at once, to demand of the governments, to demand of terror funding Qatar, to demand of everyone, to create the demand on the Pope, who sat with a Kfir wrapped Jesus. We have to demand greater accountability. Otherwise, the Holocaust of our generation will continue to happen. We are only in an early phase of the attempted genocide, and only the involvement of common people of the world in creating greater change is going to stop it. My prayer is that people wake up.
What's your website for people who'd like to know more about the work that you do?
IsraelForever.org is our website. Our primary channels right now are to try and inspire through Instagram, YouTube, and our podcast. But we also have ongoing activities that virtual citizens of Israel, our global community, can do so as to feel more connected. That's our goal, to go people to people and help you do more in creative ways, the ways that suit your life and can make a difference. We're very small. I live in the Judean mountains of the most incredible land in the world. This is the center of the world. And when people will realize that the hostage crisis we are facing today has an impact on you, you will understand Israel better. You will be a better person for trying to understand Israel and the Jewish people. And you will be stronger because you too can identify as a virtual citizen of the greatest civilization. Help save it and let us defeat the Sodom and Gomorrah of today. Come and learn, come and connect. Thank you so much for giving voice to the voiceless.
Well, Elana, thank you very much for sharing today.
It's been wonderful. I hope that everybody's staying strong.